Persona 3 is a massively important game. We're not going to disregard 1 and 2, but this set the foundation for what modern Persona is. And so Atlus finally re-releasing it is very significant to both fans and those who've never even touched 3 or any Persona game. That said, Persona 3 doesn't exactly have a definitive edition, as pros and cons are split up between 2 different versions. And even with Persona 3 seeing another official re-release, nothing's actually changed to shift that scale. So there's actually 3 versions. There's Persona 3, Persona 3 FES, and Persona 3 Portable. Vanilla 3 and FES are kind of the same. FES is just the bigger expanded version. Everything's intact, but there's a bunch of extras, key being a brand new epilogue called The Answer. Now, not everyone agrees that The Answer is high quality, but it's more time with characters that you'll absolutely have an attachment to if you've played through the main Persona 3 adventure. But then there's Persona 3 Portable, another expanded version of Persona 3, but also kinda Persona 3 Lite. The key addition to this one is the option of a female protagonist, and this changes the HUD elements, the music, the dialogue, the social links, and even some story beats. It doesn't have The Answer from FES, but there are some story elements that are exclusive to Portable. However, the main drawback is they downscaled how the whole game works. The only place you'll be roaming around in full 3D is in the central dungeon Tartarus. Otherwise, all the exploration from the PS2 where you run around towns or the dorms or the school, they've all been adapted into point-and-click menus. There's no 3D stuff or free movement, it's pretty much like a visual novel now. There's no anime cutscenes or animated models during the story, it's just a lot of text boxes and character portraits. Now this may sound like a downgrade, but it's really just a matter of preference at this point. Portable's pace is sped up exponentially, and while there isn't really less content, you'll still shave off around 20 hours of playtime. But more to that, there are some clear upgrades like being able to control your party members during combat, and you couldn't do that in FES. In FES, you trust the AI to make the right move, and while you can give them orders, like being more offensive or relying on healing, you've got to unlock those orders, and even then, it's not ideal. It's never ideal. So, do you go for Portable, which I'd say plays better but is surely less immersive? Or do you go for FES, which is a much higher production but with gameplay drawbacks? Atlus said Portable, which is absolutely fine but somewhat questionable in some aspects, and we'll get to that. But fans have actually been making their own remasters of both FES and Portable for some time now. So let's take a look at them, because honestly, this goes very far above even the official Atlus port. But before we get there, here is a word from our sponsor.
Lemon parsley chicken Pollard, hot honey peach pork chops, and nacho pork burgers. What to choose, what to choose. All these meals from HelloFresh just look so delicious. And that's just the recipes I narrowed down this week. There are over 55 options to choose from each week, and it's so tough to choose sometimes. But thankfully, no matter what I pick, I know the pre-portioned ingredients will arrive at peak ripeness. After all, if I want good food, then I need the best selection to go into that food. And not only does HelloFresh deliver on that promise, but new menu options appear all the time. You want some Mediterranean meals filled with fresh fruits and veggies, nuts, and whole grains? You're going to find it here. And even if there's something you don't like, your box can be customized by swapping one protein or side for another, or even adding a protein to a veggie meal. How can you go wrong with this much variety customized just the way you want it? And as always, these meals are super simple to make thanks to their step-by-step recipes. I've gone from dreading most cooking to honestly enjoying it. It lets me zen out while cooking before enjoying a meal made with my own 2 hands and in only 30 minutes or less. Seriously, it's great not having to worry about meal planning or portioning food to try and cut down on waste. HelloFresh has that covered. Trust me, if you haven't tried it yet, it's absolutely worth it. In fact, you can use my link or go to HelloFresh.com and use the code POGGVGJuly16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. Now, while I enjoy this lovely meal, you enjoy the video.
Alright, let's start with the one that we're not getting a re-release of because this is a totally different experience. Persona 3 FES. Emulation can do a lot of really cool things, especially when it comes to increasing image quality. Both on official and unofficial emulators, you've probably noticed crisp 3D elements and really low quality 2D elements. This is basically because 3D models are being rendered by the system in real time, whereas the 2D stuff has been rendered already. It's basically a JPEG or a PNG. Not only that, but they're tailored to the original resolution of the game. So when these games are in 240p or 480p, all the elements gel really well. But if you're making the entire game 720p or 1080p or 4K, the 3D stuff will scale up real nice, but the 2D stuff will not change. If anything, it just gets worse. This is especially noticeable when the 2D stuff is essential to the whole image. Like Final Fantasy VII's pre-rendered backgrounds, suddenly the characters just don't really fit in with the environments. Or Castletown in Ocarina of Time. The HUD stuff is always a bit distracting, but these elements, yeah, you can't really look past them. And Persona 3, up until now, has not been a greatly enjoyable experience on emulation. We're using PCSX2 in 4K, and there are 2D elements everywhere. The text is 2D, the HUD is 2D, the character portraits are 2D. Even if most of the environments and character models clean up fairly well, you'll always have some 480p text just staring at you. By default, there is no way around that. What more, Persona 3 doesn't officially support widescreen, and I guess if you're a heathen you can just stretch the image, but don't do that or I'll get you. So, let's fix some stuff! And the first few things are so simple because these don't require any mods. They're cheat codes. I'll have a link in the description below for you to download this and put it in your cheats folder. But our first cheat is a widescreen cheat. This will make everything 16:9, which is pretty damn cool. We'll build upon this in just a moment, but here is something huge. A cheat that enables you to control your party members in combat. Yeah, that's just a cheat code. You don't need to mod the game for a game-changing feature. You can do this on PlayStation 2 on the actual hardware. With only this, you can argue that Persona 3 FES no longer has many disadvantages to Portable. This fixes its biggest negative, and it's just the cheat code. I think we've already made a pretty damn cool version of FES, but let's get even bigger. Let's change the actual game files. Persona 3 FES HD Overhaul Project. This is currently 69% complete, nice, and it's largely focusing on remastering all the 2D elements, with a minor focus on 3D. There's a link in the description below to download the mod, and you can install this with a program called Amulus. This is basically designed for most Persona games, and we'll be using it again for Portable too. The download gives you 3 files. One is the base install pack, which is the bulk of the remaster. There's also the optional colourful party panel pack, which is less of a necessary feature, but it looks pretty damn cool. It basically makes all the shadows under character portraits match the colour scheme of the character. That's rad as flip! And lastly, there's the 2K add-on pack, which is totally optional, you don't need this, but it does go a little further to improve all the 2D elements. I'm also installing the widescreen font fix and community widescreen fixes, as while the widescreen cheat code does do a lot of heavy lifting, it's not exactly changing any game files, whereas this totally does. It makes it feel very officially done. Again, everything's in the description below. But look at this! Suddenly character portraits that were super blurry and pixely are clean. Text is massively improved, especially the top right of the screen, which is always viewable. It's always staring at you with its low quality, but now, look at it! It's so clean. For a team that don't have access to the original high-resolution files like Atlus potentially do themselves, this is remarkable. There are some limitations, like some portraits haven't upscaled quite as well as others, but it's a big improvement over the assets that would otherwise massively clash with everything else in the game. This is exactly what I'd expect from an official FES remaster. True HD widescreen, all the 2D elements have been cleaned up, and you can take control of your party members during combat. That's all I would have wanted, and the community has done it themselves. There is still work to be done, but you can play the game like this right now. I only caught a few minor elements that weren't cleaned up, like the yes and no in this text box, like this is the original text, but surrounding it is the lovely new text, and that's about it. And the anime cutscenes obviously won't magically be HD, but there's very little we can do about that without the official files. If you're gonna play Persona 3 FES, this is how you should do it. They truly have made something that's worthy of being an official remaster, and it's just a mod. So what about Persona 3 Portable? Well, first let's take a little look at an unmodded Persona 3 Portable running in 4K. This is on the PPSSPP emulator.
Welcome. You're late.
So you might be thinking, John, I thought you said this was 4K! You think I'm a fool? No, I don't think you're a fool, but Persona 3 Portable, if anything, is much harder to remaster, as it doesn't really have many 3D elements, almost everything is 2D. The text, the portraits, the backgrounds, everything outside of Tartarus and battle is an image designed for the PSP's 272p resolution, and at that, it's meant to be viewed on a 4.3-inch screen. It looks fantastic on here, but blown up to 4K on a TV? Not so much. Now of course there is an official remaster coming, and Atlus had the potential to replace everything with the original high-res imagery. But either one of two things happened. 1, they don't have those assets anymore, or 2, those assets were never drawn for HD and were always made for the PSP's low resolution. This is to say, it's not really different. In fact, I'm not really a fan of what they're doing here. If you've dabbled in emulation or just any kind of retro re-release, you probably recognize this, the smoothing filter. It looks like they've just sort of applied this to all the 2D backgrounds. I mean, ignoring that it's Japanese, can you clearly read that? Heck, look at the bike! It's just kind of losing detail. Me no like that. That said, the 3D stuff, of course, still looks pretty good. It's just anything that's 2D is unfortunately not getting touched that much, and when it is, it looks like mostly filters. Enter Persona 3 Portable True HD. This one is only 25% complete, but has been in development for a while. It wasn't a reaction to the re-release, in fact this was posted to Game Banana on the same day. And this isn't to say play it on an emulator, don't buy the official version because that is silly. I'm really happy they're re-releasing Persona 3 Portable, and I can't wait to play it again on a portable on the Switch. But also this team is hopeful that their mod here will be applicable to the Steam version of Persona 3 Portable. So again, it's not, oh screw Atlas, it's look how good this is. Being only 25% complete, you'll for sure notice elements that haven't been touched yet. But when something's new, you can absolutely tell. Like yeah, the text boxes and character portraits are a hell of a lot better than the original, but everything else looks a heck of a lot better too. Other parts have been greatly remastered, far beyond the art of the original PSP version. Like here's when you arrive at school on PSP, and here's the true HD mod. But I find this part incredible. So here's when you first arrive and see coffins everywhere on the PSP version. Okay. Here it is in the new official re-release. It's more or less the same, just the contrast is kind of changed a little bit. And finally, here's the true HD version. Now, they haven't introduced any new elements, but some of them are more obscured in darkness or the low resolution, and they've now been emphasized, and some seemingly redrawn. It looks mad good. And there's even some mod synergy going on, as some of the backgrounds were taken from Persona 3 FES HD mod. So the areas that use screenshots from the original Persona 3, like a lot of the dorm, they've been very faithfully replaced in a much higher quality. The True HD project is far from Persona 3 Portable's first texture pack, but it absolutely is the largest scale one to date. They will improve the 3D stuff down the line, but right now they're focused on the 2D backdrops, and that is very clever considering most of the game is 2D. And one more time, this isn't to say, do better Atlas. I'm happy 3, 4 and 5 are going multi-platform. This is a good thing, but clearly their resources aren't going into 3. It's just really cool seeing what the community is capable of in their own time. As to whether they've made a definitive edition yet, that is still a matter of preference, but the gap has been made a lot smaller. FES looks a hell of a lot better, and the biggest gameplay shortcoming has been fixed. But Portable has the female protagonist, and it moves a lot faster. It's really up to how you'd rather play the game. Both of these are incredible. So one last time, all the downloads are in the description below, and I hope that you revisit Persona 3 and have a lot of fun. Thanks everyone, bye!